All right, is we recording for the show or what?
Well, I started because I didn't want to miss the story.
Oh, well, all right. So Dr. Barry Taff, who's a world famous parapsychologist with about a 40, now it's a 50-year career in the paranormal. And he worked on the original Entity case, the one that the movie with Barbara Hershey was turned into a feature film back in the 70s. Right. Well, it's a real story. The story goes like this. And I know this is a sidetrack, but this gives a little depth to the character of Dr. Taff. Woman living in Culver City is having and experiencing in the early 1970s manifestations of a entity, a spirit, and she's being physically harmed, and she later on claimed that she was being raped violently. And there's a scene in Poltergeist, the movie the original movie, where the woman goes up the wall and then on the ceiling, and she's being held up by an unseen force and dragged across the wall and down back to the bed. That kind of crap for real is what we're talking about in this case in 1970 in Culver City with this woman that the movie in 1975 was later based upon. And what Barry said was that, he'd seen stuff there at the house at that location. He saw stuff that was similar to this here, except it was more elevated. And he said after the first time he was here, about 5 days after, he calls me up, he goes, I'm having these weird, violent sexual nightmares. And I said to him, what is a weird, violent sexual nightmare? And he says that, look, I find myself in this dream. I'm on a bed and there are 3 girls on top of me, massaging me and caressing me. And all of a sudden I start feeling a pain in my abdomen. So I look up and I look to my stomach and I see that they're literally having their hands inside my stomach and tearing out my guts. And I said, oh shit. And the girls, by the way, were naked.
Of course.
There are 3 naked, attractive girls on top of him that are doing this. And oh yeah, they started melting candle wax on him. And it was like, he was like, oh, it was like all sensual. And then all of a sudden it started hurting. And then he says he felt his stomach, pains in his stomach, looked up and he saw his stomach's being disemboweled. He wakes up in the middle of the dream. He goes into the kitchen, he gets himself some milk and warms it up, goes and does about whatever he can to kind of clear his head, thinks it's all over, goes back to bed. Seconds he goes to sleep, it picks up right where it left off. Gets up again, the same thing happens. He gets up, he goes into the kitchen again, blah, blah, blah. That's 3 times in a night he's done this. I said, that's strange. He goes, no, what's strange is, David, the same dream has been reoccurring for the past 3 or 4 nights with the same situation. I wake up, go up and take what I want to clear my head, go back to bed, starts up right where it left off.
God.
That is what's so uncanny about the whole thing. So we incorporated that into the film. We showed some people the movie and they said, it needs some sex. And I said, oh. I said, well, I'll give you sex, but it will not be gratuitous sex. It'll be something. And I thought, sex. Wait a second, Dr. Taff. I'll incorporate that into the film. So we have that in the film.
Yeah.
Other things like we've heard voices in the house. We incorporated that into one of the scenes in the movie. It's just a unique take on the reality of living in this haunted house. And this was done a number of years ago. So it's a totally different story than what most people expect to see. And unlike Quentin Tarantino with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I wanted to keep closer and adhere to the true story, but I didn't want to venerate the victim. I didn't want to venerate the murderers. I wanted to venerate the victims.
Right.
So what I did was I changed the names of the characters and fictionalized the location of the murders and the names, but I kept everything pretty close to the facts of, 4 people were killed. I took Verplansky, I took out Stephen Parent, I took out Wojtek Frykowski, and I put Sharon Tate's husband, Roman Polanski, in there. And I gave Sharon Tate's character the same analogy as she was an up-and-coming star, whatever. She was dating this at the time. In my movie, she's dating the producer of this film, who's called The Fierce Vampire Killers. which is based upon the Fearless Vampire Slayers that Polanski made. Then I made it that there were 3 killer girls and 1 guy, just like Tex Watson, except I took Tex Watson out. I put Charlie Manson in there, his character. But again, the characters are fictionalized. So it doesn't say Charlie Manson. My character's name is Henry DeWitt. And his motivation has nothing to do with Helter Skelter. His backstory is this. He's dating this girl who's an actress. She and he are dating and go off to a party that she's invited to, this producer's party.
Right.
The producer falls in love with her. He comes up out of the blue to talk to the producer about him, and he blows the guy off. A couple of days later, her boyfriend, Henry, is sent off to Vietnam. So he's in Vietnam. The producer's been courting the actress, his girlfriend. He's found being missing in action and can presume dead or captured in Vietnam by the North Vietnamese. He's actually in a gosh darn medical center in Vietnam, recuperating. They don't know who his ID is. He comes across an article in the paper that says his ex-girlfriend has taken his screenplay, and this producer that blew him off is now dating her. It's in the news, and she's to star in the movie that's based on his screenplay.
Wow.
So when he comes back, his motivation is revenge against her and him because he's been double betrayed by her, and he hates the guy's guts because he's taken away his girlfriend, and he's making his movie, and he blew him off when he met him initially. So that's his motivation. So in a sense, what I've done is I shifted the story a few degrees over by changing some specifics, very, very few, but to get the story across that you'd see that it's delineation of Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Roman Polanski, and Abigail Folger's characters are completely revealed in this.
Right.
And what you've done is I took out Manson, but I put him in as one of the murderers. But his motivation is that, so it's taking away this thing of attending to Manson's fame, but bringing more attention to the victims, which is the whole point of the movie, without fairy tailing it up.
Right.
Because I think that it's not, I mean, I know everybody loves the ending of Once Upon a Time. And I was reading an article and somebody said, it would have been so wonderful had that happened. But it didn't.
Right.
It's a ripoff. It's a jerk off. I'm sorry to say, you're great at having that experience. It's sad, but in actuality, it falls on deaf ears in my eyes, because it's like Inglourious Bastards. You're going to take Hitler out in the middle of World War II. You're going to rewrite history and use these historical figures. It's like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. I didn't.
Right.
I was like, what the. Really? I mean, you don't have to take a historical figure and demoralize him. Oh no, he's been lauded onto the platform and the pedestal of great horror heroes. He's a freaking president of the United States, for God's sakes. Let's keep him there. Let's not, I have a real difficult time. It's not taking Sherlock Holmes, a fictional character, and putting him into situations.
Right.
I find that I get a little bit distressed when I see stuff like that, because it's not an ancillary character. It's the focus of the whole freaking motion picture. He's the lead character.
Right.
And to me, it's like going, oh my God, I watched that Abraham Lincoln thing. And I said, before he was a senator, before he was a lawyer, he was a vampire slayer. What the hell? Come on.
Exactly. Honest Abe. Slaying some vampire tail.
Honest Slayer Abe. I mean, and when it comes to something that's let's be honest here, it's a historical point in history. I'm talking about the murders at the end of the street that were so horrific and so demonstrably a point in time that you can see like this. Here's what I'm trying to say to you. You can see on a line across. Here's the line of history, and then it just stops for a moment. Then it goes like this. It's a hiccup. That's what that incident was. Everything changed, and people in the present day that are young, that are under 40 or under 30, sit and say, I don't think that Sharon Tate's murder changed anything. It had no impact on me and my part of the world. And I don't mean to roll my eyes, but it's kind of like, oh, you're not old enough to know what the hell it was like before the murders and after. And you
Right.
don't understand how it really shifted tremendously, dramatically, the perception of the youth generation and the youth culture and how
Right.
people were perceived. And I know that it's history now, but I mean, I saw it as a kid and noticed immediately this dramatic change, like right at that moment. The following day after the day the murders were announced, everything changed. It started really here in LA, but it says across the entire country, it matriculated and made its way through and then across the globe, that people shifted their attitudes and their demeanor and their what how should I say their perception of these kids, of the hippie movement and stuff. And when the murderers were uncovered 3 months later, that really was the nail in the coffin for the innocence of the 60s.
Yeah.
It was, people don't understand. It's like, well, yeah, I know that you don't seem to realize that now, 2021, but then, and since then, things dramatically were changed. I mean, had she not been murdered, I think that there would have been a continuation of that type of feeling of hope in the late 60s into the 70s. A demonstrable shift. It wasn't there when we really look at 1969, post the actual murders and then post the trial in 1971. Oh God. So basically I wanted a film that venerated them with staying true to the story, because you're not doing them any good by using them as characters and a fictionalized account of their dramatic end. I don't think that you're doing them service. And a lot of people that are young take it as gospel. I mean, look, I live here and I've seen people drive up and say, well, where's Cliff Booth's house? I said, the one with the house with the swimming pool, right? The big glass window that led to the swimming pool in the backyard. I said, look around here. I said, there are 4 houses up here outside of Sharon's. I said, do you see, or 5 houses now. Do you see anywhere that you could possibly put a swimming pool on this hillside, on any of these houses? And he goes, yeah, that's right. He goes, it's on a separate driveway. I said, that separate driveway belongs to a house over in Studio City, about 5 miles from here. There is no house up here that has a swimming pool outside of the estate where the murders took place. And I kind of wanted to do something that, was a ghost story that brought it to the present day versus just keeping it stuck in that era. So I used a few vehicles or devices to create that type of dynamic, like a time vortex. So the murderers are basically uncovered or undiscovered because they're traveling through a time vortex, which occurs, which we find out in the movie, where our main characters go back to the day of the house under construction and basically get thrown back to the day of the murders and become the victims and have to deal with the circumstances, first trying to figure out if this is actually happening or if this is some kind of delusion. And once the delusion part has been wiped away and they realize that in fact they are there, they have to figure out what are they going to do in the meantime, because they know what happened. It's history. And as one of the characters says, we know what happened in 1969. What are we going to do? And he goes, we don't have a choice. We have to do whatever we can. And then the other character says, without giving away, says, you can't change history. Which is the through theme that I said, if you're going to use a historical event like that, use it. Don't scurry away from it to make a Hollywood ending. I can't stand it when you it's distasteful to do something that's honest. But to do what's dishonest is more distasteful in my eyes, because you're not telling the story, and you could have done a beautiful job of going back to Pulp Fiction and using the same type of a treatment of, instead of 4 stories going on concurrently at the same time in different places and then finding out that it's a puzzle, doing 2 stories on the timeline. Manson and Sharon Tate, what they were doing from I'd say from 1966 to 1969, and go back and forth between what was, and then at the point where they actually first make where the first connection is made in March of 69, you have that moment be where the 2 parties cross paths And at that moment, there's like a weirdness going, wait a second, this is all happening. Because Manson's story is so fascinating. With what people don't understand is you're all looking at Manson like he was known to be a threat, a killer. That's not the case. Before August 8th, 1969, and probably January of 69, December of 68, he was still engrossed and in touch with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. Dennis was taking him around all these parties. He was known for having a fight with Mama Cass at a party that Mama Cass had at her house, and she threw him out. He met Dennis Hopper. A lot of the people on the hit list, which people don't understand, had crossed paths with Manson at these events and parties, that social gatherings that he was at because of
his goal was to be a musician, correct?
His goal was to be a singer, a songwriter, musician.
Yeah.
And what happened was that Dennis Wilson liked some of his work and thought he was, had some interesting prospects and stuff. But what happened was that at the time in 1968, when Brian Wilson had released Pet Sounds, that was the big culmination of all the people in Hollywood saying, that's it, that's the sound we want. Just like it had happened a few years earlier with Phil Spector and the Wall of Sound. Everybody ran to Phil Spector to produce their albums.
Right.
And as a result, he was the talk of the town. Same thing happened 5 years later with Dennis Wilson and Brian Wilson and Pet Sounds. So what happened was Manson got impatient, wanted his gosh darn record deal to happen sooner than it was. Timing couldn't have been worse. Dennis and Brian was working on Pet Sounds, was inundated with producing jobs for other people's albums. And Manson got impatient, completely over the top impatient. He started bothering him at the sound studios, at the recording studio, at his home. He started barging in and interrupting in the middle of sessions. And finally said, that's it, I can't have you around. You burned the bridge, we're done. At which point Manson went haywire and went kaput. And I thought, what an interesting story that would have been to see Quentin cover like that, and then this, and then back to what took place in the movie.
Right.
Quentin Tarantino-esque fashion. Not making a fantasy fairy tale that made everybody feel good about a terrible tragedy that you can't change.
Right.
Run away from. It's like, I'm sorry, I never saw it. I don't want to see it. I saw bits and pieces of it. I was here during the filming of it. And out of respect to Sharon and the other victims, I don't really care to see it. Because the joke is Sharon Tate's character is in the motion picture on screen a total of 13 minutes. That's speaking, non-speaking, and everything in total. The movie's 190 minutes long. That's right. Less than 5% of the feature has this character in it. And yet people think it's about her. And it's really an homage to Hollywood in the late 60s.
Yeah.
It's a postcard to Hollywood of the late 60s. She's just a piece of that postcard. She's not the thrust of it. If anything, it's the two characters, Cliff and what's-his-face.
Yeah, Leo and Brad's character.
Leo and Brad's characters, exactly.
Yeah. Real quick, we are speaking with David Oman with our exclusive interview for Brown Mint Horror here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're speaking with David Oman, the owner of the most haunted home in America. And we've been talking about the Tate murders, Chucky Manson, and how Quentin Tarantino could do a better job directing films. So
well, I didn't say that. I just think I thought that the story could have been much different, and I didn't know it was going to be this. Look, when I first read it, and they sent us letters telling us, the people in the neighborhood, that he was coming up here to shoot the movie. I reached out to them immediately and say, hey, look, use my house as the house where these guys were living in, because I knew a little of the story, and I said, hey, this house is right down the street. You can go walk outside and shoot the gate, etc. And they said, well, no, we can't because we have a different gate. We're not going to do that. And they didn't, so it didn't end up going that way. But it's not. Look, every director, and I know this for a fact because I made my own movie and had people give me, about it. So, and I said, when you have the money and you can do it yourself, go do it yourself. Otherwise, go fly a kite. You're telling me what your opinion is. You put up your own money and make that movie then. It's not the movie I made. And I respect Quentin for what he made. I just personally think that with the notoriety of his style, And
Yeah.
and again, I know that he's shifted from Pulp Fiction to that dynamic, which I thought was brilliant. I've seen that so many times, and I love that movie. Um, I still like the idea of playing it off that way, of doing the two stories and then crossing paths and then backing back and then crossing paths at the end or
Right.
towards. But again, it's his movie. I respect him. I met him. I spoke to him plenty of times when he was here for the 2 days. It's just a difference. It's just I haven't seen it out of respect for Sharon and her memory and the memory of those who died, because I just found it a little bit disingenuous.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Before our interview here, we'll put some stuff in the show notes as far as like, showing like who you are and like what you worked on, links to your accounts and stuff like that. But just for the sake of this interview, if you would,
don't worry, say it. I'm not going to take offense.
Most haunted house in America. You tell me. People out there don't believe in ghosts and stuff like that. This is the $1 million question. People don't believe in ghosts. What would you say to convince them otherwise?
Well, here's the thing is I've learned this after 19 years of living here and being on, what is this, 9 or 10 different paranormal TV shows.
Right. Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Ghost, all that.
Soon to be on Fright Club? Yeah, Fright Club with Jack Osborne and the two Ghost brothers that are on that show.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be on that. We're actually shooting that in a couple of weeks.
Maybe Ozzy will come and visit.
Well, I've actually been in touch with Ozzy and Jack's producer for their company, trying to get them here for a long time. And I have a feeling after we shoot Fight Club that I'll definitely be able to get Jack to finally take a visit up here and realize it's not as bad as some of the people have portrayed it to be. And those people are, we won't get into that, but we'll talk about your question. You can't convince anybody of anything. And what I mean is it's not politics. It's deeper than politics. Why? Because politics comes into your life when you're about 8, 9, 10 years old in most cases. Spirituality and religion, which are two separate things, come into your life when you're born. Meaning, when you're born, you're either baptized, you have all these rituals in your religion. So you're raised up through this doctrine. It takes a lot of people a lot of time to realize that what they're been taught is basically a form of control. And I don't care what religion it is. From any single religion you want.
You can preach on that. Go ahead.
It's not about preaching. It's just a matter of saying, look, if you don't want to look at it honestly, don't. I'm not here to tell you otherwise. I can't convince you of what you don't want to hear. That's what I've learned. I can only tell you of my experiences. I can tell you the experiences of other people that have visited here. I can show you the TV shows. I can show you my videos. But at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't want to believe something, that's their choice. It's that simple. It's not for me to tell them what is and what isn't, because you basically are running into a brick wall. That's something that they've been brought up with, that they believe that they think it's part of their soul. It's like this shirt is their cover. It protects them from everything that they don't know and understand. The thing is that I can only tell them this, that it took me 15 years to write a book, this book here, about my own experiences. And this is only one volume. I haven't even gotten into working on the second volume. But in 250 pages, I basically document the history of the area. And again, people who have read the book said, you don't preach, you just tell it. You don't have an angle. I just said, this is my story. This is the history. You can't argue with the history because it is fact. This isn't stuff that I make up. This is about the area. So I lay it out in a way that explains in a very, very systematic manner the facts of going back 200 and 300 years. Here's what happened then. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happened all the way to this point. To give a foundation for understanding. And by that, it opens people's minds up to say, okay, this is interesting. And it's not to soften them up as a lot of people do in manipulating people. I just tell the story so people who read it go, I like that. I said, what did you like about the book? And they say, well, that you were pretty honest about telling the historical significance of the area and enlightening us to the fact that pre-1850, this whole gosh darn Southern California was inundated with Native Americans. And people go, what? It goes, Beverly Hills says, Beverly Hills was home to a ton of Native Americans pre-1850. And all of LA County and all the Southern California and all of Northern California was all pretty much just inundated with Native Americans. Yes, there were Spaniards that were here before that had basically proselytized them, and as the Mexicans later did, in building their what do you call it? Their not the pueblos, the missions up and down the coast, but they were still here. The ones that weren't conscripted to be in the church were still running free and living here. So people go, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, it kind of explains some things that people have to say, wait a second, there was history before the white man. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
this is a fact. And it kind of starts that from a place of letting them know that this is the foundation that we're building upon. Then we talk about the foundation, me buying the property and building the house. And I explain in detail without going into dramatics, without going to religious pontifications about a demon or an angel to that. I don't play that. I don't want an audience to be taking sides on a religious note when I'm just telling the story as it is. So
well,
people can,
with the I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Quick thought
Yeah.
on that, and that's actually something I've been thinking about because we tried doing this interview before and we had to reschedule.
Yeah,
but
I got sick. Yeah.
With kind of preparing for this, that's kind of the mindset that I've had going into this interview and asking the question, haunted houses, paranormal phenomenon, stuff like that. I feel like it's beyond the bounds of whatever religion someone is. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It just has to do with things that just are, for lack of a better word. They just are the way that they are. We've got some close friend. I got a close friend that's a paranormal investigator. I got another guy that I know. They're not out there just collecting fake data or fake disembodied voices that are on electronic devices or whatever. Obviously, it's real. It's a real thing that they have captured. Here it is. You can listen to it. So that's the kind of mindset that I've kind of taken away. That, and I know I'm kind of rambling and stuff like that, but if our body, I feel like kind of like our bodies are energy. Inside our bodies are energy. And then once we die, that energy is still alive. That energy has to go somewhere. So you're living in a haunted house, and I hate the word haunted. You're living in a home that has energy in it, if I could say it that way.
Yeah.
Tell me about kind of what it's like on a day-to-day basis for you as far as living around this energy.
Well, here's the thing is I believe that every place, for lack of a better word, is haunted. And what people don't understand when I say haunted, we got to start from taking away the mythology of the paranormal. There's so much bunk, nonsense, and old wives' tales, old myths, old.
Can you give us an example real quick?
Well, yeah, as an example, a ghost can't leave. A ghost is stuck on that location where they died. Why? Ghosts don't wear chains. You see a ghost in a gosh darn Casper the Friendly Ghost cartoon, he might be rattling some chains. And I think a lot of this comes back to one famous movie or one book that's written in the 1850s by a man named Charles Dickens called A Christmas Story.
Right.
Yeah, A Christmas Story. No, not A Christmas Story, gosh darn it.
Well, you're thinking of Red Ryder BB gun here.
Thank you. I'm going deep.
You're thinking of
Darren McGavin portrayed Ebenezer Scrooge.
Right.
Miss Carol. God.
Yeah.
Miss Carol was trying
to shoot your eye out.
Oh my God, I did. I shot my glasses crunched. So the point is that, and then we'll get back. There's a funny anecdote to that because that's funny. I should mention the Christmas Story because, well, I'll get to that first. Let's finish this first.
Christmas Carol.
And you in A Christmas Carol, he's the ghost of Christmas past is rattling the chains.
Right.
It's a fable. It's in the what Dickens was doing in A Christmas Carol was basically utilizing ghosts as a vehicle in a fable, like Aesop's fable, to derive a story that would teach a lesson to human beings. It wasn't, yes, he used the thing about the chains and stuff. That was just a vehicle. It didn't necessarily mean that ghosts were rattling their chains. Furthermore, Bob Marley didn't die in freaking his house, did he? He didn't die in Scrooge's house. He died in his own home. So when you think about it, there were certain things about Dickens that people take from and then leave the rest behind because they can't use it. It's like, well, ghosts aren't stuck to where they died, because if they were in Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge wouldn't have been visited by the three ghosts because they certainly didn't die in his location. And people like say, well, why is Sharon Tate visiting your house? And due to the fact that I've been on these 10, soon to be 10 television shows, each one takes a piece of the pie. Here's the pie. They take a small sliver of it and expand and exploit and make that their story. And what people think is only Sharon Tate visits here. And it's like, well, as I now have to say, had the murders not taken place down the street from my house, it still would not remove any of the activity that's occurring in the house, because it has very little to do with the proximity to the murders as much as it has to do with the fact that, as Dr. Taffet said, the house has an extremely elevated DCEMF level that's off the charts. And what he said was, when he was working and researching on that location in Culver City, that was the Entity House, as it was known, he said that in this house, or in that house, when the spirit would manifest, the meters, his geomagnetometer would spike to 2000 milligauss positive, would remain there while the spirit manifestation was there, and then would drop down to normal, which is between 300 and 500 milligauss positive. He said in this house, he said that the DC geomagnetometer was always spiking when he was here. Over the course of 1 year, he says that never, in the middle of the night, in the daytime, it never dissipated, it never changed. What happened was, he goes, the EMF levels would shift through the house. So in a certain part of the house, it would be elevated at one point, other times it wouldn't, and a different part of the house would be elevated. And we're talking between 2000 milligauss positive to 2000 milligauss negative, which is unheard of, as he said.
Well,
and would, yeah.
So with that being said, I'm believing that you said 19 years you've been there. Obviously, initially, I would guess that it was a bit of shock to you.
No,
are you shocked any by your day-to-day with these entities or spirits?
No, to be honest with you, I mean, stuff happens, but what I've noticed is, and it's kind of like respect. I've been afforded a certain amount of respect, and people are going to say you're being arrogant. It's like, well, I can't explain it otherwise, only because I've been here 19 years. I've had incidents happen. I've had more incidents happen to people that have walked into the house, first timers, and then how should I say, they don't get accustomed to it. It's like they have the incident and I get pissed off. I mean, I literally, here's an example. Forgot how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, my friend Adam came over, rushed in the house. He goes, I gotta use the bathroom. Goes into the bathroom on the top floor. Literally like a minute later, he runs out of there and he's zipping up his zipper and talking. He's screaming hysterically, going, no, it just, I said, what? He goes, I went in there to the bathroom. I shut the door. I unzipped my fly and I started taking a leak. And I'm going I have to go really bad. So I'm going. And it goes, all of a sudden I hear from behind me, the sound of this. And I said, what happened? He goes, I turned around and over my shoulder, I see the faucet handles are both turned on. And they weren't turned on when I walked in. So he said, I turned to look and said, I pissed as fast as I could. I didn't even get myself arranged. I ran out of the room, freaking out. What the hell was going on? And I walked into the bathroom. I said, thanks a lot. I said, the first time in the gosh darn history of this home, you managed to turn the faucets on and you do it for him? I said, what am I, chopped liver? What am I, no good? I'm not good enough for you? You did it for him. I said, what the hell? I said, I'm kind of insulted. I said, I really am really insulted. I said, I think I should be the first when the gags are pulled here, not some stranger. I said, that's not right. And people say to me, you would? I said, yeah. Why the hell do I want somebody else to enjoy the opportunity to have an interaction with a spirit? Why is it not me first? I said, I'm the one that's here. I deserve to have it. And people go, you mean that? It's like, well, I'm not asking to get my head cut off, am I? I mean, what are you talking about? It's like,
I mean, come on, you're paying the mortgage. They're living rent free. I mean, the least they could do is like at least throw you a bone.
Do something for me. I mean, you did something. It's like when I saw Jay Sebring's apparition in 2004, 17 years ago. Around goddamn, like a week ago. It was 17 years ago in mid-July, and I saw him. I was like, I wasn't freaked out. I was like, okay, what's going on? What do you got to tell me? And I would have thought that at that point, the spirit's been, oh God, we can't goose him. He doesn't get scared. Well, in that case, we can do what we want. He's not going to react in a bad way. He's not going to have an adverse reaction. Oh, a ghost. And so I'm thinking, I said, so this is like 7 years later. I'm going, so what, or 5 years later, it's like, why him? Why not me? Why did you do that for him? That's not right. I want to see this stuff. I want to experience this stuff. So people get like twisted. To me, it's like, if it happens, and I mean, the figurines on top of the 180-gallon aquarium get knocked over. And I'm like, very seldom am I in the room when it happens. I'm usually in my office and I can hear it, and I go upstairs and said, all right, I know. I treat it like I acknowledge it, and I don't have a problem with it saying, don't do that again, I'm scared. I'm going, come on, what else you got? Come on, do something interesting. It doesn't bother me, because as I said, what people don't realize and don't want to realize is that people have lived where you're living now. Many different people have lived there through the years, meaning there's layers upon layers upon layers of history to these locations that you might not know or understand or be familiar with.
Right.
But as you were saying, when the spirit dies and separates from the body, and here's the body and here's the spirit, and the spirit separates, that's it. That's why, as Barry told me, graveyards are the least haunted place on the planet. And I said, why is that? He goes, well, what's a graveyard? He goes, what do you put in a graveyard? He goes, bodies. Yeah, he goes, you don't put souls in there, do you? And he goes, think about the time it takes when the person dies to finally be interred in the ground. Do you think that gosh darn soul is sitting there hanging around the body, watching it go around, where it's going, the whole process of the embalming procedure? I said, he goes, no, there's no connection. Once it's split, that moment of death, it separates, and there you go, it's gone. It's not together anymore. And that mythology of like, where you die is where you're going to have to be spending the eternity. That's a Beetlejuice joke, be honest. That's Beetlejuice in a nutshell.
So just, I don't know, just quick.
Yeah.
The cat's trying to get out. As these questions come to me, I'm just going to say them. Sure. So, Mr. Oman, what do you think, based off your everyday today lifestyle? Here comes the $1 million question. Here I am.
Hereafter.
What do you think happens when your spirit separates from your body?
I have no idea. See, there's a difference. See, I don't play the theoretical BS game, which people, go about and I've got a book on what happens after you die. Yeah. Somebody I know called the Bible is also a book that tells you what happens also after you die. I don't tread. Here's the thing is I don't like to tread in areas that I will admittedly state factually, plain and simple. I have no idea, but I will also tell you, I will not go there and try to rationalize or theorize or hypothesize. Why? Because it's too subjective of a point of contention to get into big mess arguments with people about.
Right.
because I don't want to get into heaven and hell. I don't want to get into the Catholic religion. I don't want to get into the Protestant religion. I don't want to get into Lutheranism or Buddhism or Islam or, Judaism or any of them, or even Tenrikia, or even any of the previous religions that don't exist anymore, that have passed through time, such as the Egyptians and the Mayans and the Aztecs, because let's face it, it's ego driven. When you look back at how long man has existed on the planet and how many incarnations of religions have been provided to us. And honestly, when you look back, say 50,000 years, and I love to play devil's advocate, and it pisses off the religious individuals that want to propagate a religious belief system. And I go, okay, so we'll talk about the sinners that died before Jesus was around, say 2,200 years ago. What are they? What are the millions of souls that died pre-Jesus Christ existence in the year one? What happens to those millions of souls? Are they condemned? I mean, no one wants to discuss this, and they come up with a patented solution and an excuse, and I go, that's a cockamamie cop-out, because you can't go back. And I then go forward and go, so this guy that died 2,000 years ago, as I was taught, is supposed to be here saving our souls. I said, no, just some of them. So you're telling me now that he's now selecting who he's going to save and who he's not. Right. Doesn't that sound a little bit cliquish, to put it bluntly? And it's not to poke fun at anything. It's just to say, at a certain point, I'm the bastard that does this. If you're going to say X, then Y, Z, P, D, Q, all the way down the end of the alphabet have to go. Have to fall in line, because you can't have X and not have a continuation of that go on. And people don't like to do that. And I say, but you have to, because you're not being honest. You've created a theory that fits so nice into your box, but when you take it out of the box and you apply it across other realms, and it falls apart. And you have to go and say that it's got to stay in this box. If it has to stay in that box and it can't be applied across the spectrum, it's a non-starter, because it has to. That's why people say, ghosts do this and ghosts do that. I said, look, if ghosts are real, I don't give a crap what you read from the Old Testament. I don't care what you read from the New Testament. I don't care what you read in Latin. A ghost will do what it wants to do because that's what it wants to do, not because you think you have power from the scriptures. And it's like, what if this ghost was dead before the scriptures, died 2,300 years ago?
You have a point.
I mean, people don't want to talk about, because it has to fit in this box. If it doesn't fit in this box, it's blown to smithereens. And that's why I said, if I say something about what's going to happen after life, and I get blown to smithereens, it's only because I know the obvious. I can't give you a theory that will cleanly cover everything in the universe spectrum, because I know better. But I do know certain things that when I hear certain theories about things like, put down a line of rock salt around you, a circle of rock salt, and a ghost can't penetrate it. If ghosts are real, they can go to the top of the world on what is it, Mount Everest. They can go to the bottom of gosh darn Marianas Trench. There's nowhere that they cannot go. So you can run your ass off. Ghost is going to be like your shadow. He's going to be right there with you if they are real. So again, I say to people, you want to make these statements about spirits and stuff, great, but you have to set up certain parameters and understand that that's the box you have to work within. Meaning that if it can go anywhere, you can't escape it. You can't wish it away. It has to be something that it wants to do and do willingly. What are you going to do? Everybody's theory goes to pot, is what happens. They don't hold up. That's why the idea, here's an example. Haunted objects. This was Bugsy Siegel's last known cigarette lighter. I'm just saying.
Right.
He died in his hand when he was shot through the window down in Beverly Hills in the flats in 1947. It's haunted. Really? Really? So then why can't this be haunted? This bottle, this is in his closet. He used this to sign his shoes.
Right.
No, because this object is shaped in the fashion of a doll that looks like a human, that's an effigy. It has to be possessed, as if a spirit is now looking for a home like a hermit crab, must seek a home inside of an empty shell and live inside that shell for protection. Where the spirit is like, I just got out of my goddamn body. I am not trying to get into another body to find a place to reside when I'm free of the pain and torment of having a physical body, and I'm now free of that. Why would I want to go back to that?
Well, I mean, so Mr. Oman, you've got obviously this firsthand experience theory of what you're living in with day to day. Then you have the other side, the glamorized horror genre of maybe some things that are based off of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
You had to go mention them, didn't you?
Well, here's my thought. I love them, but here's my thought. Based off what you said, this could be haunted.
Right.
This little guy could be haunted. So
and Hoder's in that one.
Right. So isn't it awfully convenient that the Warrens have an entire museum of collectibles that are all haunted or possessed or whatever?
No comment. I mean, first of all, look, the Halloween story and Kane and such and Jason Voorhees is a fan. It's film.
Right.
I look, I'm a diehard horror fan. I grew up watching vampires, Christopher Lee, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr.
All the Hammer films.
The classics. So I mean,
yeah.
I love horror movies. Let's get straight. That's a film. That's great. But when you're talking about reality, and then you talk about a pair of con artists named the Warrens, who were proven to be frauds in the late 70s and early 80s and got thumbed for it and got basically relegated to the trash heap of history, and only to come back because in 1998, some executive at Warner Brothers found their book and said, hey, something, maybe we can make this into a feature film. And even the people that the stories are based upon, including Amityville Horror. My executive producer, Paul Mason, for my movie was friends with Mr. Lutz. He said that the stuff that the Warrens said was bullshit. He said a lot of their stuff was just hoopla and fluff in real life. He said he went along with it because he goes, it was part of the package to marketing the movie, and they came along with it. And there were at that time, remember, there weren't that many parapsychologists and people pushing themselves out there in that field.
Right.
The internet. And Barry Taff and Dr. Thelma Moss, who was at UCLA, who was instrumental in discussing Carillion photography and talking about that parapsychology stuff back at UCLA before it was basically they basically cut off funding. Those were the few people. But let's be honest here. The Warrens were proven, if you look it up and you look up in the history and the news reports, back in the day, they were exposed as bullshit artists. And the people the Conjuring House, the real people said, that's not the true story in that movie. That's a lot of fictionalized bullshit about what happened in real life.
Whatever sells, right?
Because it's a film, it's entertainment.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there is no. Right. What's wrong with it is that blurring the lines of reality, of the truth and entertainment, and people believing the entertainment is the facts, have to understand that the book itself was hyped up. Even in Amityville Horror, the book was a little bit dramatized. There were points in the book that were later on said, no, not so much. It was built in a way to, make it a little hyped. But when you talk about taking a book and making it into a film, you do not see the book on screen. First, the books are too long, too detailed. They can never put everything in the book into a motion picture for time purposes, first of all. Second of all, there's something called a screenwriter who's writing the screenplay. He does not want to be a parrot of the book.
Right.
He wants to have and cut out his niche for himself. He is not interested in getting more popularity for the freaking book sales. His job is to create a story based on what he reads in this book or in a book and make it into a sellable, entertaining, dramatic piece of material. A and B never meet. It's like this. They never connect. They're never like this, ever.
Right.
Books and films are never, ever the same. They're always different. The problem is we live in a day and age where people are lazy and don't like to read.
Yeah.
Therefore, your information is based on a piece of entertainment, and therefore you are then locked in to that story because they knew that the people weren't reading the goddamn books. They're watching the movies. So what do? They shift their gosh darn story to match the movie.
Well, thus you have a whole Conjuring universe now.
Yes, you do. And you do, and you do, and you do, and you do. And that's the problem. Now, back to what I was going to say about the haunted objects. That is not to say that some object that was owned by somebody wasn't cherished by them and it's possessed. There was a possession of theirs that they appreciated and loved. So let's say this book. I died and this is my favorite copy of this book. Doesn't mean that I'm going to gosh darn have my spirit living inside the pages of the book and you open up and you're going to see my spirit come up. It means that I have a personal attachment to it. It does not mean the book is possessed.
Right.
It means that I am still very much connected to it. It's like people in the 1850s and 60s that didn't have a lot of money. Their children might have had one toy that they kept all of their life, or something that was very dear to them, and they had it as a child, and they only had one toy that lasted, and they kept it as an adult. There might be a connection to that person not wanting to let go of it, but that doesn't mean that it's possessed. It's the spirit. It's like if you remember in The Frighteners, there's this scene where you see the toy car moving, and you go, oh my God, and what you see is the ghost doing this with the car, pushing it around and saying, that's what's happening. They're not sitting there saying, I'm inside this, I'm the car now. I'm inside this metal little box of a car, and I'm now part of the car. It's like, no, it's still an attachment to his because he still feels connected to it. But I highly doubt that there could be that many possessions in one person's life that you could be connected to and wouldn't feel like like you touch their personal hairbrush and say, oh my God, it's possessed, because it still has hairs in it of theirs. It's like, very, very few and far between are things of that nature really around. Very, very few, because it would mean that everything that here's another, thank you. They said, tell them about the antique shop. If you want to see haunted objects, if what Zach Baggins says is true about the museum, go for free to any gosh darn local antique shop, because what you are looking at are artifacts of things of people that have died. That's how they got into the antique shop. And you want to talk about finding haunted objects for free, go to a flea market and see what objects are over 100 years old that you can find there. And those things have just as much potential of being haunted as anything that is in his museum. Because for the most part of his museum, I don't know, we got sidetracked back to haunted objects, but most of those items that are not in glass cases have nothing to do with anything but objects that were sent in by friends, fans, whatever, of objects that they thought were possessed, and they didn't want to hold on to them anymore and wanted to forward them to the museum, and that's where he has them on display. But again, the idea of haunted objects, if you want items that are once owned by people that are dead, go antique shopping. That's it. Go to an auction. You will find tons of items that are owned by people that are dead, that have just as much chance of being possessed as any object that is claimed to be.
That's a great point.
And that's how I look at it. I start to say, because if this is true, then why not? Why spend money going here when you've got it all here for free? A pawn shop, an antique store, a flea market. And who knows, maybe you'll find something that somebody's still connected to in some way, and their spirit still has a connection to that object. But again, I'll tell you this, my gosh darn gut feeling, and this is a small theory, but if you show that object a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation, I have a feeling that that spirit that's attached to it will look at you in a greater perception and really highly regard you as somebody that is honorable and respectful to their memory, not even knowing them. In spite of the fact that you didn't know that person, that you have something that they once cherished, that you now have and you honor, that the spirit would be pleased that you're in possession of it because it's actually living, it's a living extension of that person's memory. And how could that be bad?
Excuse me just a second. Sorry. Might have to cut this portion. I have my uncle passed away a few years ago. And our favorite thing to do, he had a great stereo system. And our favorite thing to do was to obviously play CD. I mean, he had a very exhaustive CD collection. And that was kind of our thing. And all my entire life, he got it in the 80s, like the original Bose system, whatever. He's had it. I'm 33 this year. So whenever he died, I had to have it. Like, I had to have that. And it's put away right now.
How come?
And, well, whenever I moved in here, and then I don't really have I'm redoing this room that we're in. So I want it to be on display and actually used. And that is what you said there about a great honor of it going further past their death and, it being honored and stuff like that. That's huge.
Absolutely.
That's and that's kind of what got me going there, was because, even though that he's gone.
Yeah. He's around. Don't kid yourself. He will make an appearance with you, a very clear appearance with you. I have a feeling when you put that up and you start playing the music, because it'll resonate in his heart, and his soul will be like, still there. I'm still here. I'm still around. Because you're venerating him. You're breathing life into his soul, into his spirit, to his energy, and he's still around you. I mean, I'm getting like chills around my forehead all of a sudden, like just like tingling, going, yeah, but that's the thing about relationships. When you have a relationship with someone and you share something dear with them that very few people do and appreciate, you kind of make that connection for eternity, I believe. And I don't know if that's so much of a theory, but it's kind of like
it makes sense.
It's something that I believe in, because as even though we are in a body, our spirit's in a body, and their spirit is no longer in a body, that doesn't change anything. The only thing that changes is they're physically not here, but their presence is still here. And what I mean by is, your grandfather, is saying, why the hell is he goes, get that thing. I want to hear my music, because to him, what made him is still there.
Right.
His physical body didn't make you. It's like when I saw my mom, who died 16 years ago, in the house that I grew up in her bed, frozen, immobilized. And I remember touching her skin, and it was like maybe about 1/8 of an inch pliable, and then it was just cold. After that, it was like it sank in, and then it was cold. It was like concrete. And I remember looking at her and saying, that's not my mom. And my dad was there, and the nurse was there, and I said, that's not my mom. I said, and it was emphatic, and I kept saying, that is not my mom. I said, my mom, that energy that caroused through her veins, that energy is no longer there. That's not my mom.
Right.
And that's the thing about it, is that energy is you're still connected to his energy, just like I am to my mom and my dad now. And that energy is still present. You can't, it's like, when when you haven't seen your grandparents in a number of years and you find, oh my God, and you just have that connection. That doesn't die. Death does not remove that from our being. Just because their body is no longer, I feel that the energy is still there and it comes back and visits. And I was trying to say this is back to people that have the layers of existence previous to our existence, and the people that have lived there many, many years before us and before them, and all those countless layers of those people's existence, they come back. They return to their old haunts, as the old saying goes, because it's a familiar place that they appreciate when they were alive. Even if the location has been modified, changed, or torn down, in their perception, I think, they perceive it as what they remember, not what is really there so much as what they remember it being like. And that's why a lot of places, when they say they saw this person walk through a wall, and then they look at the original floor plan of that home to find out that originally there was a wall, it was a walkway there. They built a wall there to create a separate room, and that's why it turns out the path that spirit was walking was in fact the path that was there on the floor, on the blueprints, prior to the modifications to the home to the present day. So that's why I said spirits come back to places that were where they lived, loved, worked, played, sometimes died. But again, why would you want to go back to the place your last moments on this earth? There's a certain amount of disconnect that people make these statements because, hey, it sounds terrific. It's great for myth making. And I go, yeah, but it's a cruel, insensitive joke to put off to all those people that die. And I'll go one step further. You'd have to be the most vainglorious son of a bitch to sit there staring at your body while it's rotting in the gosh darn in your coffin in 6 feet under, and looking at that, going, oh, look at that. My eyes just melted into pus. Oh, look at that. I'm turning into mortified human fluids now. Oh, I'm oozing. Oh, why do people think that there's that a cemetery is haunted outside of the people that were venerating the memory of those who had died, such as Valentino's famous Lady in Red, who would go to his grave site on the anniversary of his death and put a red rose on his grave. And then after she died, apparently, they said they saw the spirit of a woman on the anniversary of Valentino's death go to his tomb, put a red rose, and then she vanished. That is what Barry Taft said to me years ago, saying that cemeteries are a receptacle for human remains. The body separates from the soul at the moment of death, and that's it. Otherwise, there's no reason for a cemetery to be haunted, except for those that were mourners that couldn't, that spent their days visiting their loved ones at the cemetery. Personally, I make it my choice not to do that. And my mom said when I was younger, when she said, I said, how come we don't go to the cemetery to visit your father, your dad's mom or dad's dad here, grandma and grandpa? And she goes, we just don't do that. I said, you've never done it. She goes, no. She goes, because they're not there. That's where their earthly remains are. If I want to talk to my grandparents, I just talk to them, type of thing. They're around me. And I kind of said, yeah, that makes sense. Because what are we doing? The only time we ever went to a cemetery was to actually go to a funeral. That was it. Otherwise, it wasn't part of my life to go trotting over to the cemetery to hang out with my dead relatives and talk to their tombs. It doesn't make sense to me. But those that do, that was their life. Then after death, they might be doing that in their afterlife because they did that when they were alive. But otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Oh, crap. Hold on one second. Oh, crap. Brandon, I got to call you back. I'm in the middle of a podcast, but I definitely have to talk to you.
This is the exclusive interview with David Oman, who is live on the phone.
Sorry about that. That was definitely somebody of the living. So, and here's the other thing. I mean, I've got some friends of mine that have died through the past, years and stuff, including my relatives. And I have yet to see any of my relatives or friends that have died. Whether or not that's because they don't want to visit me and they're giving, well, wait until you die to see you, or it's just they just don't really give a rat's ass to make an appearance. I don't know, but the point is that I have seen one apparition in this house myself, and that was Jay Sebring 17 years ago. But other than that, I haven't seen any of my own relatives or friends that have passed, which is curious to say the least. I guess I wasn't their favorite.
These selective ghosts, man.
Yeah, like, here, eat this. Yeah, we'll see you when you die. Not until then. I don't, yeah.
When I'm gonna go to a lighter note and then we'll end. Not that it's all been light. So here you are living your day to day in this home. Does it kind of bug you, like with like reality TV shows, like, you know, the Long Island Medium and like stuff like that, the Teresa Caputos of the world, who have just been doing that cold reading shit for like years and years and years and made money off people?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I'll be honest, and this is true, and I've said this before. I think in my lifetime, up until about 15 years ago, yeah, about 15 years ago now, I had gone to tarot card readers, psychics, whatever. And I have some friends of mine that are still very good friends of mine that are psychics and stuff. And you know, I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars through the years, you know, going to see psychics and stuff. And what I found is that most psychics tell you what you want to hear. Simple and plain as it gets. And with that, I mean, they don't want to tell you stuff that you don't want to hear, because A, you're paying them, and B, they want you to come back to pay you more. What do I feel about? I mean, first of all, I think that in reality TV, there's categories. One being like Lisa Williams and the Lisa Caputos and stuff. And until, let's not forget the Hollywood, the kid, what's his face, that had his show. You know, they were entertaining shows. I mean, I don't have a bone to pick with any of those people. Those people,
Well,
look,
the question wasn't to set it up for that either. It's just kind
well,
of
no,
like,
it's just you're saying, to having been psychics myself through the years and understanding the dynamic of what causes people to go down that path, to seek answers from people that might know of the future events and stuff. And I just kind of just said, you know, after I guess after many years of doing that, I just said, you know, enough's enough. I just, what's going to happen is going to happen. I have to be my own psychic, so to speak. And but that I mean is everybody's got a gift. Everybody has the gift. It's a question of, do you openly admit it? Do you accept the information you get? And how do you deal with it? Most people don't want to trust their instincts. They want somebody else to confirm it. They want somebody else to be the one that they can blame, that they can say, well, they were wrong and I should have done different. I just got tired of it because I started to realize that I could do it myself if I just let things happen and pay attention and listen to my own gut instincts. That, you know, the other category in the field of reality TV and the genre would be the paranormal. Well, there's two types of shows. There's the story-based show, which tells a story about somebody. And then there's the investigative show, which does what it attempts to do. What do I think of them? I don't watch them. I got tired of watching them years ago. I found them to be a lot of fluff, a lot of camera on me, and oh, did you see that? Oh my God, that blows my mind. It's like, I don't goddamn need to see your reaction, whether it's authentic or not. I could give a crap if you took a shit in your pants and you had a little mini camera down there showing the poop hitting in your underpants. I don't care. I really could care less. I don't understand why, if there's a camera facing this way on this pole like this, why the hell isn't there a camera facing in front of them? Why are we not afforded the opportunity to see what evidence that they're reacting to? Why does it always be, did you see that? And then the swing of the camera, swoosh, looking at what they're looking at. So, well, you know that the action's in front. It's not on his face. His overdramatics or her overdramatics means nothing. To me, I've lived this 19 years. I find your dramatics boring, dull, hackneyed, pathetic, idiotic, mundane. It's like, oh God. And then to hear them say it's a devil or a demon or this and that. And I've been maligned by one individual about being told I'm possessed and I share my body with spirits and I'm a poltergeist agent. Let me tell you something. No one is a poltergeist agent for the most part. The idea of a poltergeist agent was something that was derived in the 40s from a German scientist, I think it was the 1840s, 1850s, about poltergeists. And somebody then later on said, you know, there might be a connection between an adolescent in the area, in the room, or in the household. That's the cause of this manifestation of activity, because their adolescent mind is going through such traumatic changes and stuff that they're able to manifest and control and through telekinesis and move objects and stuff. And I started thinking about that, saying, you know something, you're grasping for straws. You really don't have a clue when you keep on promoting these theories. And I go, but what if there isn't an adolescent? What if you can't, you know, I mean, what if there is an adolescent? You're blaming the adolescent, yet it has nothing to do with the adolescent in the way that you're using it, that person. I said, maybe the adolescent is a conduit to helping be the receptor and also be the receiver and also the instrument by which the energies is being exuded out of, but it's not necessarily him or her, it's a spirit using them to amplify it. But again, it's a theory that I don't even believe in, because it's taking away the response, the activity from something that we are in some way responsible for. Instead of saying, why is it not just a spirit? Why isn't a spirit capable of doing? Why do we have to look for an adjunct to be the cause of this? And I said, you know, telekinesis is so infrequent a manifestation of in real life. It's so. It's something that might exist in maybe 1/10 of 1/100th of 1% of the population, meaning maybe 20 people in the entire globe have that ability, but I don't believe that many do even. And I think that it's a cop-out because, again, we're looking for something to rationally explain what we can't explain.
Right.
That's why the ghost particle in quantum physics. And I go, quantum physics. This is so far, this is why I can't say, I said, this is so far beyond human comprehension that you can throw billions of dollars at it. And you're never going to come up with the answer. We haven't been able to figure out in over 50,000 years of human existence in civilized communities outside of the hunter-gatherers. We've gone that far. We haven't figured out, and it will remain, as the Greeks said, it will remain the unknown question. It'll remain an unknown question. It'll remain an unknown, and question will never be answered until we die. And as they said, when humans cross the river Styx, there is no return. Meaning, when you die, you come back not. Meaning you can't tell. And that's why I said you can ask the spirit, how's the spirit going to know what's going on if it's just a spirit? It doesn't know, it just exists.
Right.
And that's what I said about things here at the house, stuff happens. Like, yeah, I've had voices I heard voices call my name and talk to me and say, I'm here, and say, curse at me or curse about other people. And I'm going, all right, I heard that. What was that about? And I don't get a response, but I heard the commentary, and it's not like, it's like, what's going on? Or, hi, John. It's always whispery voices that are recorded on the cameras in the house. And it's not like we're actively looking for ghosts. It's like they feel like saying, hey, we're here. We want you to know we're here. And here, we're going to give you a sign.
Right.
And that's how I treat it. It's never threatening. It's about your perception or my perception that creates the stigma or the dynamic of the occurrence that can traumatize us. But it's not the occurrence that's traumatizing us. It's our perception of the experience that's traumatizing to us. And I don't let it. I just say, all right, so fine, I saw a ghost. Right? It's like, I saw you. I saw you just walk right by. Next time, just manifest in front of me. I'm not going to freak out. And I appreciate more than seeing something darting out of the corner of my eye or hearing somebody whispering in my ear going, why not just show up and show yourself and talk to me? I'm not afraid of you. I'm interested to talk. What's going on?
Well, that's a great segue to a quick question, and we'll close with this. On some of our other interviews, we always say, hey, if you could talk to somebody that's an upcoming filmmaker or an upcoming director, what would you say? In your aspect, though, let's say you could talk to somebody who is like, David, I heard that you have spirits in your house. Some crazy stuff is going inside mine. What should I do? How should I approach them? Or how should I act?
God.
What would Mr. Oman say? Best advice.
I get this. I get a lot of that question so many times in the past. And honestly, I can't put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I try not to. I try to say, look, from what I've experienced and what I've tried to deal with and found that works, not being afraid is the first and foremost, one of the most important things you can't do. You can't show fear. Just like when an animal can sense fear, and then will attack accordingly or treat you accordingly. I think the same thing goes with spirits. You can't be afraid of that. You can't think of yourself living in Halloween, in the movie Halloween. You're not on the set. You're not in Poltergeist. You're not living on that existence. You're living in the real world.
Right.
And you got to have some ground rules. I say, if you live in an environment that's haunted and you're having some difficulty with your spirits, call them out. Say, excuse me, I know you're here. I acknowledge you're here. I make no bones about you being here. You're not scaring me. You're not upsetting me. You're being a pain in the ass if you are being a pain in the ass. I appreciate it. I acknowledge your presence here, but come on, we got to do better with this. We got to figure a way to get along because this isn't going to work as a relationship. And that's what this is. This is a living, working relationship. I live here. This is my home. I know you don't understand this, but this is no longer your home. You're visiting. I know that it's okay. I don't have a problem with that, but let's try to be nice with one another, treat each other with respect and kindness. I'm not going to have a meltdown if you manifest and stuff, but don't knock the windows. Don't break any glasses. Don't destroy anything. Don't show that you're upset by manifesting in a very, very, very angered fashion and demonstratively volatile way. Let's get along. If you want to talk to me, talk to me. I'm here. I can't get rid of you. I admit it. I can't do anything to get you out of this house. So let's try to get along. Don't use the electricity at your will and jack up my electric bill because it's happened to me before. And I had to have a stern conversation with the spirits, and it hasn't happened since. And just try to establish a relationship and a ground and a foundation from which you can build. Because you got to realize if there's a spirit there, you're going to go get somebody like an exterminator, quote unquote, or a professional to come in there and get him out of there. Let me give you 2 cents of advice. Ain't going to work because the only person that can do the dirty work is you. You can't have somebody act as your gosh darn shield and walk in front of you and basically crawl up their ass and live inside of their body, because that's what you're asking. Because you're going to let them, they're going to go about their business and leave, and you're going to be stuck there at home. And the spirit's going to be, well, that son of a bitch is gone. I'm going to go back to doing what the hell I feel like I'm going to do.
That damn David, he calls this dude over here trying to get rid of me.
Yeah, you got this guy. He goes, and where's the guy? He's not there anymore. No more bodyguard. Well, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you are solo. Because the old saying goes, if you want a job done right, you do it yourself. You don't try to intimidate a ghost because what are you going to do? You're going to hold up kryptonite and say, like Superman, here's some kryptonite, Superman. 2 things. Superman's a fictional character and kryptonite doesn't work on ghosts. My point is that's how you got to start thinking. It's like, well, if I got to get along with a ghost, yes, you do. You might just have to. You might have to, gosh darn, knuckle down and say, all right, there's a spirit that says, how can we figure this out? We have to get along because I'm living, you're not. So actually on the physical plane of existence that I'm here on, you got to kind of bend and acquiesce to my requests. As much as I want to accommodate you, we have to be mutually agreeing upon things because it won't work out otherwise. And I have threatened to get the world's greatest poltergeist what, oh God, exorcist, whatever, to the spirits, and said, if you're going to push me there, I will do whatever I have to, but I don't want to. You'll use that as a last resort. So let's try to get this worked out without having to bring in the big guns. And whether or not I believed it or not, I copped an attitude like I believed it, even though in real life I don't. And the spirits were like, we heard you. We don't need to go through that mess. That doesn't make anybody happy. And at the end of the day, we'll be back here anyways. So save your money and your energy and get along with us.
Right.
And try to do it that way, because what are you going to do? You're going to go put that salt ring around you and go watch the salt ring get licked up?
They've watched too much Supernatural.
But
They've watched too much Supernatural. It's Hollywood. It's glamorized.
They know better. They watched The Night Stalker back in the 70s. They know.
Right.
No.
Well, on that note, Mr. Oman, thank you so much for joining us. You made a small time podcaster in Nashville extremely happy this evening. Thank you so much for the chat. Thank you so much for especially the part about, and I'll put this in the notes for sure. If folks have something that a loved one left them that they bonded over with, your advice would be to, hey, put those objects out. Let them see that you appreciated that time and that relationship. And you never know, you might I don't know, you might get a little visit one day.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's not for everybody. Not everybody doesn't have to do that. And again, some people don't have the space to display the kind of stuff. But if there's something that somebody had owned and that that they really cherished, show it the kindness and respect and appreciation that you would if that person was still alive and was able to walk into your house and see it there and say, thank you. If you hated that person's guts, don't. But if you truly love that person and you want to show them in a sense that you still honor them, and not everybody's going to have an object. That's the thing, is you can do it just by holding that in your heart, the memory of them in your heart. But don't be afraid of stuff saying that's possessed. Oh yeah. I remember bringing back black sand from Hawaii and coral when I was a kid. Hello, it didn't work out like the gosh darn, like the Brady Bunch trip to Hawaii with Vincent Price and the tiki. I'm sorry. I didn't get the savage curse of Hawaii of Pele.
Wow.
Sorry, Pele. No offense. Pele
all right.
The god of Hawaii, of the Hawaiian Islands, but you get the gist of it. It's just
yes,
about common sense and practicing respect. Because someday we're all that are talking right now, we're not going to be walking on this earth in the physical form. And I would certainly hope that others that are alive then would take my sage words of advice and think about that, saying, respect those that were before us and honor them in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, if stuff starts happening and you wonder why, maybe it has to do with disrespecting the memory of those people that have come before us.
Great way to end. Thank you so much, Mr. Oman. We appreciate you. This has been the David Oman exclusive interview with Brown Mint Horror. Thank you so much and have a great night, sir.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Thank you.